Another very exciting game played at the US Championships. It's round 5 and we're going to have a look at the game between Grandmaster Christopher Yoo, only 17 years old but already quite a strong Grandmaster, rated around 2600, and he's playing against world's number 2 Fabiano Caruana, who is actually in good shape after a solid start with 2 draws against Hans Niemann and Levon Aronian. He won his next 2 games, he's on 3 out of 4 and trying to become, once again, the US champion. But in order to become a champion and win the title, you also got to win quite a number of games in this event. And playing with the black pieces against a significantly lower rated opponent, well, usually you got to try to sharpen up things and take some risks. So it's a very attractive game. I'm pretty sure you will like it. And therefore I ask you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done yet. Thank you very much for all the support so far. And then I will show you what happened. Christopher Yoo goes for the move knight f3, c5. So that's an invitation to get back to the Sicilian if white goes for the move e4. But there followed c4, symmetrical English. But after the move b6, black is trying to develop the bishop to b7. White goes knight c3, bishop to b7. Anyway, the move e4 played. And after e6, pawn to d4, pawn takes, knight takes. We do have this very well-known Maroczy bind type of structure with pawns on c4 and e4. White is claiming a nice space advantage in the center. But black is very solid and played here the move knight f6 to attack the pawn on e4. Bishop to d3, protecting the pawn one more time. Knight c6. Knight takes c6, and here, interesting moment. You can take back in 2 different ways, either with a bishop, but Fabi decides here to take with a pawn, capturing away from the center. So we do have a symmetrical position with only one open file, the open d file. And white still has a bit more space, as I said, but potentially this bishop on d3 may become vulnerable if black can play here the move e5. To fix the pawns in the center, that bishop on d3, as well as the knight on c3 actually, they are not looking great. Black has plans here to go bishop c5 and, for instance, install the bishop on d4. White doesn't want that and played here the move e5, attacking the knight on f6. And where do you go with that knight? Now, interestingly, Fabi just went back to d7, very natural move, but Engine really likes this move, knight g4. Looks like the knight cannot go there because the queen covers that square. But if you do take the knight, well, there's queen takes d3. And this queen is very annoying, preventing the king from getting out of the center. Things are looking quite nice for black, having obtained the pair of bishops. But anyway, this was not played. It's not that it was a missed win or so, but it looks like a pleasant move, knight g4. Because after knight d7, okay, the knight is attacking the pawn as well, like it does on g4, but it's somewhat more passively placed. Bishop goes to f4 to defend the pawn. Queen c7, attacking the pawn one more time. White defends it with the move queen e2. And black castled here. Castle queenside. Interesting idea. Quite an original position, I would say. And black is still quite solid. On a good day, you would like to go c5 and open up the diagonal for the bishop. But if you do that very early on, there's always knight b5 to deal with. So for now, okay, black is a bit passive. White played bishop g3. It's an interesting move. Now the bishop is protected on f4. Sometimes there are ideas to go f5. You cannot capture en passant because the bishop would be hanging in that case. So now black cannot advance the pawn to f5, but Fabi played here this move, h5. He really is looking for a way to create some chaos on the board, launching his h-pawn, ready to go h4, attacking the bishop, maybe to go h3 to provoke some weaknesses on that long diagonal. But here, very good move by Christopher Yoo. He played bishop h4, and apparently this led to an almost 40-minute think for Caruana, which is quite remarkable because his rook is under threat. And why did he spend here about 40 minutes? Well, the only way to really save the rook is to put it on e8. It was not played in the game, but it does allow white here to play the move f4. And that is actually quite a good move to protect the pawn. And well, now the h-pawn is pretty useless. It cannot kick the bishop away. This looks like a very nice in stable advantage, as white can use the e4 square as an outpost for either the knight or the bishop. So that means that here Fabi is calculating his way here to sacrifice the exchange. As the pawn on e5 is hanging, now you can take the pawn on e5 in two ways, either with a knight or with a queen. Probably taking with the queen is objectively the best move, as in the position after bishop takes rook, queens are coming off the board, you take the bishop, you have a pawn for the exchange, but as you can see, white has an extra rook, but it will not be simple to infiltrate along the only open file. So there's definitely compensation, but perhaps that's not the way to play for a win. I mean, it's enough compensation, but how to play this for a win with black, that's very, very difficult. So Fabi decided here to take with the knight on e5. Bishop takes d8, taking the rook. Knight takes d3 with check. White recaptures. Queen takes d8. So now anyway, queens can be exchanged here. White can do that, which still seems to favor white a bit. But white played here castling queenside, which is also absolutely fine. Threatening to take the queen with mate. So black got to do something. Either exchange queens or keep queens on the board. Fabi went for queen c7. He's keeping queens on the board, believing that on a good day that king on c1 can be targeted by the black queen. Well, let's see what happens. King b1 is a solid move. Bishop to e7. Rook h e1. Now, white is absolutely solid. I mean, what can be wrong with white's position? You have an exchange. Okay, black has a pawn for it, but all white's pieces are looking great. And that pawn on h2, that cannot be taken, of course. There's queen d7 with check. The queen enters and will take the bishop. The alternative, to prevent the queen from coming to d7 anytime, it's rook d8. Was also not played in the game because it runs into queen h7. Very annoying move, as it turns out the kingside pawns are quite vulnerable in this case. So black played here first the move g6, solidifying the structure on the king side. All the pawns are safely protected. White played g3. I mean, not needed, but it makes sense. You don't want to reckon with this move, queen takes h2 all the time. So g3 is quite useful. King b8. White played queen e3. Solid move, doesn't do much, but it's absolutely fine. Here the bishop goes to a6. And here I think, okay, you're attacking the pawn on c4, but why do you protect it with the move b3? I think this is a serious weakening move by Christopher Yoo. It really weakens the dark squares around the white king, and the knight on c3 is less stable. And for instance, what I want to point out is that you can play a move like knight e4. I think it's a very good move, as you're planning to go queen c3, maybe to go c5, try to open up the queen side, maybe put the knight on d6. I mean, that's how you try to make progress here. And the pawn on c4 can never really be taken. It does run into a move like queen c3 or queen d4 with a double attack. You're winning material. So there's no need at all to play the move b3. I think it's a technical mistake by white. Bishop c8, the bishop has done its job and is now looking for a way to be activated somewhere. At the right moment you can go e5 and bring the bishop to f5, for instance. Now white still can go for knight e4, but play the move f4, also possible, but seems like there's this move h4, which was played. Good move, as here you can see that black is intending to take, and if you recapture, who knows, the rook can enter on the second rank at some point. Queen e5. Attacking the queen, attacking the rook. Black plays f6. So here you can still decide as white here to swap queens and play this position. But once again, it will be difficult to break through, and I think black is doing okay here. But if it's enough to win, it's a different story. White just went back with the queen to e3, so a lot of back and forth, provocative chess. And white is saying, okay, the pawn on e6 has become more vulnerable, because pawn on f7 is no longer defending it. But now, pawn takes g3, white takes back. And look at this, e5. Beautiful move. It's a pawn sacrifice. If you take it, which was played in the game, now Christopher Yoo refrained from taking on e5 with the queen. It does win a pawn, so white is up a full exchange. But look at the power of the bishops. It's a check. King a1, for instance. Queens are coming off the board, and then you put a bishop on f6 with tremendous play here. I mean, it's very, very difficult position to play. It's still holdable, probably, but black is super active here. I don't really see a way for white to untangle from these from this pin. King is stuck in the corner. Looks pretty bad, but probably still playable. Anyway, white didn't take on e5, saying that okay, the pawn on e5 is pretty weak anyway. Rook h1. He is trying to prevent the black rook from entering on the 7th rank. Bishop c5. Bishop hits the queen, ignores the threat. And still, you can probably just go back with the queen to e2. I think you gotta stay close with your queen next to your own king. But instead, Christopher Yoo is going on an adventure here with the move queen g5. He's putting pressure against that pawn. But there is a rook takes h1. White takes back. And now, look at this, queen d6. It's not only defending the pawn on g6, but looking for a way to enter on d3 with check. And this is a critical moment. I mean, I already said, knight e4, for instance, queen d3 loses the knight. That's absolutely not possible. But I was looking at this line. This is really spectacular. To me, the most natural move would have been rook d1. Was not played, but let me show you this. Here, bishop f5 could follow. And, well, if you go king b2, for instance, saying that you keep the knight defended, everything looks okay. But there's this brilliant idea, and I'm sure this was overlooked by Christopher Yoo in the game. Bishop a3 check, king gotta go into the corner. And now, you don't move your queen, you put the bishop on b4. Which means that you're threatening to take the knight. If you take the queen, it's bishop takes c3 with checkmate. Amazing idea. And, well, doing something about that rook on d1, let's say moving it to c1, runs into queen d4, and black has a massive attack against the white king. So there's no chance here to go rook d1, and I'm pretty sure this was what Christopher Yoo missed in the game. Instead, he played here the move g4 to prevent that bishop from coming to f5. Queen to d3, check, attacking the knight as well. King has to go to b2. And now this bishop d4, attacking the knight. Rook to c1. Everything is still defended, but how is white ever going to break free from these pins? Look at the queen on d3, defending the pawn. It's looking great. And what is black going to do? Well, black played here this move a5. Is that pawn really coming forward? Well, I think it's mainly to ensure that the king can always hide against potential checks, for instance, on a6. So things are looking absolutely great. And note that white is completely stuck. I already mentioned the rook cannot move, needs to defend the knight, but also the queen got to retain control over the d2 square. For instance, if you go queen f6, you can give a check here. And then if you block with the rook, it's bishop takes c3. The rook can't take because it's pinned. So, well, white played a4, stopping the pawn, the black pawn, from getting any further. Queen e4. Maybe not the best move, but Fabi was getting lower on time and he played a very pragmatical move, keeping everything defended, attacking the pawn on g4 with queen and bishop. And of course, the knight on c3 is not allowed to move at all. It's pinned, so it cannot take the queen. Queen f6 played now. King to c7, preventing any check. But apparently things are not so simple. I mean, the best move for white was not found. It's b4. Very difficult move to play. After pawn takes, you can give a check on e7. And if you block, you go queen takes b4. You're still in exchange down. Black is better. Can probably take on g4 at some point. But there are ideas to play a5 and open up black's king as well. But in the game, instead of playing that move b4, white played g5. You can say it's fixing the pawn on g6, but it's a grave error. It gives away the f5 square to the bishop at some point, so that bishop can join the attack. Queen d3 played. Queen e7. King b8, queen d6. Number of checks are coming in. King b7, queen e7, king a6. Black is getting out of these checks. Good move. And now, this move, b4, was played. And you can see there are ideas here to go b5. And the king is kind of caught in a sort of a mating net. But you can take with the queen on c4, removing that pawn on c4, which was an important support of that b pawn. Now b5, it doesn't work. It doesn't win the queen. You can take back with the pawn, but you can also take with the queen here. The knight is pinned, so not able to take that queen on b5. Instead, they followed the move. Queen e8, attacking the bishop. Queen takes pawn with check. king a2, queen c4, king b2, same position. Now the pawn on b4 is just eliminated. And what is black going to do next? Well, you really would love to get the bishop into the attack somehow. But if you do play bishop e6, there's queen a8 with checkmate. So you have to be careful. Instead, king to b7 played, defending the bishop. Queen e7, check again, king b8, queen d6. King goes into the corner. And, well, apparently there's no good check. For instance, if you go queen f8, you can even play queen b4, check, forcing the exchange of queens. And if white captures, then you take with the pawn, hit the knight on c3. And that will be eventually 2 bishops. And a lot of pawns against the rook. So that's, of course, an easy win for black. There followed queen takes g6. Taking a pawn. White has a passed pawn. But that pawn is not going to play a role at all in this game. There is this move. Bishop to e6. Queen and bishop are working together. Queen a2 is a big mating threat, as the knight is not a good defender when it's pinned. Rook c2 was played, trying to run away with the king. There's queen a2 check. King has to go to c1. And now it is bishop e3 check. King got to go to d1. And then the final move of the game, bishop g4 with check. The king, well, it can go to e1, but now the bishops are doing a fantastic job of covering all the squares on the second rank. King can't go there, so just a check on a1 will lead to checkmate. Beautiful mating attack by black. By the way, if you block with your knight on e2, that's the remaining alternative. Then the queen can give a check on b1. Knight is pinned. If you go rook c1, you can take with the queen. And once again, that knight on e2 is pinned. So you see so many pins to deal with. And well, that turns out to be decisive in this game. The strength of the bishops were completely dominating White's extra material. So beautiful performance by Fabiano Caruana. Now, the bizarre thing what happened actually is that after this game, Grandmaster Christopher Yoo, he was very frustrated, which is understandable. He had quite a good position. He crumbled his score sheet, the typical chess players thing to do, showing your frustration. He stormed out of the playing hall and he even struck a videographer from behind. Well, that is not a good thing to do. And well, the St. Louis Chess Club released an official statement saying that they provided assistance to the videographer and called the police even. So that's quite shocking. And well, as a consequence, the chief arbiter, Chris Bird, expelled Yoo from the tournament because of his behavior. Well, that is a shocking development. It's already his second time this week that a Grandmaster has been expelled from a tournament. We have that story in the Spanish Team Championship, which I extensively covered on the channel as well. Now another chess player for different reasons getting expelled from the tournament. Well, I'm not sure that's how we would like to see chess being brought into the news. But anyway, I thought it's worth sharing with you. And well, also as a consequence, the results from Christopher Yoo's Christopher Yoo in this event, they have been cancelled. They are not counting anymore. I think the games will actually count for FIDE rating, but not for the final standings in this tournament, which is frustrating for players like Fabiano Caruana who managed to win against him. But yeah. Anyway, that's what happened. I will keep you informed about further developments. And let me know in the comments what you think of this game, of course. So thanks for watching. See you soon.